sleep paralysis, anxiety, depression, a series of strange and creepy events that occurred at home after visiting haunted places. Hi there, welcome to the Chronicles of the Unexplained podcast. In today's episode, I'm gonna tell you what I experienced last year when I started making this podcast. When I started with this project, unexplained things began to happen to me. And I'll start by telling you step by step. For those who don't know me, all my life I've been interested in the paranormal, mystery, enigma, and unexplained things. At the age of 15, I became more interested in this topic, precisely because a very dear friend took her own life. And for those who haven't listened, episode number 1 of the first season, I recommend that you do it, so that you understand my story better. It's about my friend who died tragically, where I lived a very strange event with her. From then on, I knew that there is something after death. Then I started watching all kinds of paranormal and horror movies. But I was never afraid of anything, except when I saw the Exorcist movie. But that was an isolated event. I couldn't sleep for about 2 weeks. Since then, there hasn't been any movie, no show that has kept me up at night. It is also important to mention that during my life, I have experienced some unexplained things, but at the time, I haven't chosen not to pay attention. Things that have moved in front of my eyes, for example, or situations with my grandmother already deceased. Several situations that I have told you in other episodes. However, what happened to me is totally different. I remember one time when I was about 16 years old, some friends and I made an attempt to play with the Ouija board, but we didn't achieve much. A couple of weird little details happened to us that day when one of my friends, without explanation, fell in a strange way while leaning against the wall. All this while we were asking things to the board. We chose to quit and not to continue playing. Then I found out that one of them started having nightmares and her mom got rid of the Ouija board. Time passed and I didn't know any more details. Maybe if I asked them, it could be subject for another episode. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'm a fan of horror movies and everything related to the paranormal. If you turn on my TV on my profile, you will find pure themes of that type. To give you an idea of the magnitude of my story, since I am not easily scared. I'm one of those who can watch horror movies at night, even being alone. I was never scared. I could go up to the bathroom in the middle of the night, in the dark, and it was never a problem for me. I would go back to my bed, go back to sleep, and I didn't even remember the movie or the documentary I had seen. Never, but never in my life have experienced what I will tell you next. It's also very important to mention that I started to visit haunted places, cemeteries, hotels, especially at night. In fact, in 2022, I took a trip to New Orleans, and as you all know, that city is well known for its voodoo roots, witchcraft, and all those practices. I had the opportunity to go to one of the most haunted plantations in America. Is located in Francisville, Louisiana, Middle's Plantation. I have some photos that I wanted to upload to my social networks. Well, those visits happened normally. A couple of things happened to us, but nothing scary compared to what you are about to hear. Over a weekend around the 3rd week of May, my husband and I paid for an event. It was a tour of hotels and haunted mansions in downtown Austin, Texas, which is where I live. Every time I went to those places, I would take videos, photos, and I would always try to capture something strange, unexplainable, some ghosts, something. On the trip to New Orleans, I did manage to capture some strange lights and figures, but it was not enough for me. On this last tour I did in 2023, I was reviewing the photos I took and the videos. I was really disappointed because I didn't see anything, and I said to myself, nothing ever comes out, nothing happens. What a disappointment. I admit that I was upset. Be careful, you have to pay close attention to what you desire. That day was Saturday. The next day was Sunday, and Monday we didn't work. It was a holiday here, Memorial Day. I went to the bed like any other day. That night, I had a horrible dream. I say that it was a dream. Several people who knew about this tell me that it was not a dream, that it really happened. I had my doubts at that time. Being in my bed and getting ready for sleep, I turned off the alarm on my phone, and it didn't take long for me to fall asleep. Almost immediately after falling asleep, I began to dream that I was lying on my bed on my back. I never sleep on my back, and that my husband was right next to me. We have a king-size bed and he's too crazy to sleep. He usually sleeps on his stomach and throws his pillows on himself. Well, in my dream, he was asleep on his side, looking towards me and with his arm holding me. Suddenly, I open my eyes, and in front of me, I see this black, shapeless mass slowly moving towards my bed, towards me. During this time, that was, I don't know, a few seconds, I felt that mass, that thing on top of me. I felt a horrible panic, and my body didn't respond to me. In my dream, I'm aware that this thing is something very bad, something evil. Because when I want to say a prayer, I can't. The words didn't come out. I had forgotten the Lord's Prayer. Then I managed to see my husband next to me out of the corner of my eye, and I was unable to move or say a word. I heard him say, I felt it too. And then I woke up suddenly with my heart pounding. Once I'm awake, I start praying because I confess that I had a horrible panic. I felt like it had been a very vivid dream. While I was praying, I was so nervous. I turned everywhere and tried to calm down, repeating over and over again. Calm down, Judith. It was just a dream. A few minutes passed, and when I'm trying to recover from that supposed dream, I see that my phone, which is right next to my bedside table, the screen turns on. Here I want to make a comment. I use a wireless charger, and my phone at night is in Do Not Disturb mode from 10 to 6 a.m. more or less. Therefore, no notifications come, and the screen doesn't have to be turned on unless the power went out and came back. The charger is disconnected and plugged back in, or it is touched by someone or something. Well, my phone came on once. I gulped nervously and started taking a deep breath, trying to find a logical explanation. It lit up a second time, and I felt my heart pounding. Yet I kept repeating to myself over and over again in the middle of the night, it's nothing, it's nothing. The third time the phone is turned on is when I say, oh my God, what is this? Because I didn't have the logical explanation, and I get hysterical when I see my husband's phone turn on. That scared me a lot. I got up, I left the room, and I saw the clock on the stove. The light had never gone out. Otherwise, the clock would be on and off, and that's when I realized that this was no longer normal. Terrified, I turned on the TV to distract myself, and I didn't sleep all night. The next day, I asked my husband if he had told me anything about how he also felt the same way I did. But he said no, that he didn't remember telling me such a thing. So the day goes by and I hadn't remembered that episode that I thought had been a single isolated event and that everything was going to be fine. But how wrong I was. That was just the beginning. After that day, I started to feel strange things in my house. I felt a very heavy environment, as if someone was looking at me or someone was there near me. I tried not to pay attention, but I chose to close the door of my room at night because I felt that someone was right in the frame of the door of my room. I couldn't see anything, thank God, but I could feel something that worried me too much. I told my mom how I felt, and she told me that maybe I was being influenced by talking too much about paranormal things. But I insist, all this was triggered by the dream I had with sleep paralysis, which was 2 days after having done the tour to these haunted places that I mentioned earlier. The days go by and I don't sleep well. The night came and I felt uncomfortable knowing that I would have to go to sleep, since I was afraid. I felt that in my bathroom, in the closet specifically, there was something that caused me a feeling of restlessness. I had to turn on the light in the closet every time I went to the bathroom. I couldn't stand being in the dark. I began telling myself that it was a figment of my imagination, and I chose to stop watching so many paranormal movies and creepy programs that I didn't want to know anything about horror movies, nothing at all. To the point that just by watching TV and seeing an advertisement for a program or movie of that type of things, I changed it right away. I was very surprised at myself because I have never been so stressed and scared by these issues. What followed was something strange. I began to feel tremendous sadness out of nowhere, to the point that it started as terrible depression. It was not only crying, but I felt miserable. I felt that it was not worth living from the terrible anguish and sadness I had. I started going to the gym to be able to distract my mind, but several times while driving to get there, I was crying all the way and I couldn't stop. I felt like no one could comfort me. After this, lots of anxiety followed. I started blaming some pills that had been prescribed to me to be able to sleep. Spoke to my doctor and stopped taking them because I wanted to rule out any possible connection with this medication. However, the doctor told me that the symptom was very rare, that she didn't believe that the pills caused that side effect. I had already been taking them for more than a month. I was sleeping well. She told me to stop taking them and to control the symptoms. The days passed and I was still feeling too much depression. The doctor had explained to me that in a couple of days after stopping the medication, I should notice an improvement, that in 48 hours there would be none of the medication left in my system. However, there were no changes. I didn't feel any improvement. I always tried to have a logical explanation, and since I didn't get it, in my desperation to have an opinion of what was happening to me, I spoke with a very close friend. We will call her Samantha. She has a daughter of the same age as my eldest son. She, like my son, has a special perception, or as we commonly call it, a gift of seeing beyond what people don't commonly see. It's called ESP, extrasensory perception. She has developed it much more than my son. At this time, she got used to seeing and feeling these spirits. She, my friend's daughter, let's call her Lisette, has had many paranormal experiences. She explained it to me as simple as that there are people who died and that somehow their spirit, soul, or energy remained in limbo and have not been able to move forward because of some pending or something that was left unfinished. but I tell you that in another episode. I just want to mention this since it's important that you have the details so that you can better understand where I got the basis to say that mine was something very strange and unexplained. Back to the story. Talking to Lisette about the details of what was happening to me, she tells me that I had probably brought something to my house, some spirit or some negative energy from those places I had gone days ago. She says that this is not common, that it doesn't happen very often in people who don't have that perception. She says that those spirits know who has the ability to see and feel them, and that is when they turn on manifest themselves to ask for help. However, she told me that there was a possibility and that I should verify the following. There are common symptoms or manifestations that indicated that something had followed me to my house. She says that she personally, apart from having manifestations such as seeing ghosts or shadows directly, or even feeling that she gets goosebumps, you feel nauseous and wake up with bruises. When she tells me about nausea, I remember that days ago I was going to eat a pork chop that my husband had cooked on the grill. That was before I had stopped taking sleeping pills. I took 3 bites and I couldn't go on anymore because I felt that I was gonna throw up. When I feel this, I blame the medicine I was taking, or that I had an upset stomach. This could have been a coincidence, but a few days later, I woke up with a big bruise on my thigh. I don't remember hitting myself, but again, I said to myself, calm down, it's nothing. You should have hit something and you don't remember. Several more days passed and I chose, as I told you, not to pay attention. However, there was something inside me that told me that something was not right. I wanted to convince myself that it was my mind that was playing tricks on me, and I kept telling myself over and over again that nothing was wrong, that God was protecting me, but my instinct told me to pay attention, to be alert. One day, I was working as usual in the office, and suddenly I received notifications on my phone that my house alarm went off. The first thing I thought was that my husband had arrived at the house and by mistake hadn't disarmed it in time before opening the garage door. The notifications indicated that it had been the sensor on my bedroom window. I called my husband right away because I figured someone had wanted to come in through my room, which is on the first floor that overlooks the back patio, which overlooks a green belt. So there are no neighbors behind us. So it's easy for people to jump over the fence without watching. When I talked to my husband about it, he was also calling me at the same time, as he also got those notifications on his phone. And he asks me, "Are you home?" And I answered, "No, I'm at the office. Where are you?" He tells me that he is in San Antonio. The alarm company called him. So my husband tells them there's no one in the house, that they do send the police. I immediately leave my work and go home. But all the time while driving, I was on the phone with my husband. I asked him, "What do you see on the cameras?" Because the notification indicates that it was one of the windows of our bedroom. And what a surprise when my husband tells me that the cameras wasn't working. This was very strange to me because my husband is always on the lookout to make sure everything works well. Then I got to the house. The police had already left. It turns out that no one had entered, and just as I am about to open the door, the alarm goes off. I go with my neighbor and I start to see the cameras, and I realize that at that moment they were working, and that they were working all the time. My husband went through the recordings after the alarm went off, and there is nothing captured on the cameras. There was no wind. No power went out. No one. Not even Amazon or anyone stopped by the house. because the cameras would have caught them. You may think it's normal that sometimes systems fail, which I also believe. The timeline of events looks like someone or something came in through the master bedroom window, then went into the living room and out through the main entrance and finally went to the garage door. There was no logical explanation for why 4 sensors failed at the same time, and that all the cameras stopped working just at that precise moment when the alarm goes off. The system was checked and no issues were found. Another fact is that my husband doesn't talk or comment on paranormal events. He stays out of it, although he does believe, because several things have happened to him. However, I could see his face. He turns to look at me as if to say, "Something very strange is happening in this house." My neighbor next to my house was with us and told us, "Oh no, you're not gonna tell me that you believe in ghosts." I was thinking for a moment and remembered a situation in which my husband and I saw some orbs floating through one of the cameras in the house, the one in the living room. That day, my husband was changing the battery and the camera was activated. We could see many orbs in real time. That was in broad daylight. We saw each other's faces and my husband said, "We didn't see anything. It's nothing." We didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my mom. I had forgotten the detail of the orbs. My husband didn't tell me, but I'm sure he remembered the orbs we saw at that moment. At this point, I think my husband was convinced that something really weird was going on in our house, because he told me something that gave me chills, something that I will tell you about in the second part of this episode. If you liked the episode, please share it with someone you know loves paranormal or unexplained stories. Follow me on different podcast platforms to receive notifications whenever a new episode comes out. Follow me on social media where I share previews of new episodes before they are published. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as Unexplained.enigma. Facebook, Chronicles of the Unexplained. Thanks for listening and see you all in the next Unexplained story.